Last Minute Blues Podcast with Donnie, Alex, Jeremy, and Jeff Burton.
Hey, it's the Last Minute Blues Podcast. Donnie, in studio with Alex and JR. Alex, of course, from 101 ESPN. Jeremy Rutherford from The Athletic. I do radio, currently, hopefully, for a while.
Radio.
At 105.7 The Point and at 106.5 The Arch. Gentlemen, I got to tell you, it's amazing to see you for a couple reasons. One, because I really like you guys, and I haven't seen you in a couple weeks.
Shucks.
But two, because training camp started yesterday, and we officially have hockey to talk about. It's amazing, man. I love it. I'm
That's
so
great.
excited.
Yeah, good to see you, boys.
JR put his appreciation post of being back at the rink yesterday, and that's when it feels like hockey season. JR takes a picture of the ceiling at Centene, says he's happy to be back. 30 years in the business. It's like, oh, baby, it's
You know why the
season.
ceiling is? Because there's a blue note on the ceiling. I'm not one of those people who take a selfie, you're at the rink, you take a picture of yourself. Like, no, that's not
Why not,
happening.
JR?
So,
Why not?
Yeah, well.
You got a good-looking mug. You should put it out there a little bit more.
Can I tell you something
Yeah.
about the whole, selfie sort of situation? All right, for one, obviously working in radio, working in the jobs that we do, they want us on social media and doing things as much as we can, which I completely understand. I get it. But every time that I have to do a video or a picture that includes myself, I automatically think first and foremost, no one wants to see this besides my wife and my mom. It is so awkward.
It's nice that your mom and your wife look at those because mine don't even look at those.
Oh, no. They I think Mary more so than my mom. But still, no one wants to see me on camera, and that's okay. It's okay. I see it.
You guys look good. You
Thanks,
guys
man.
look good. This is what YouTube is for. It's why we made sure Last Minute Blues Podcast was on YouTube.
Can I ask a question here, just from the get-go here before we
Here,
talk
I'll be
too
the
much
teacher.
about hockey?
Donnie Fandango.
Thank you. I understand why it's important that we record and do the YouTube video thing. I get it. It's 2024. They want to see our faces. I don't understand why, but they
Especially
do, so I understand. So our team, our engineering team, they bust their ass in here to get it so that we sound good, so that the cameras are working correctly. How was this planned so poorly that no one decided that it was not a great idea to have beige freaking walls all over the place so it just looks beiged out? And then if you're looking at this and you're looking at specifically, no offense, JR, at you and I who have very little color in our skin, we bleed into the friggin' beige wall.
Yeah, we're not
And
Italian.
Donnie said, I'm going to wear a white shirt, too. We're going to make this thing
Crap.
all
I didn't even think about that. I just wanted to wear my Jason Isbell
Well, you got
shirt.
the nice Stanley Cup
You're like
banner
a
behind you.
chameleon over there.
What I'm curious and what I would love to know is how many downloads do we have to get before we can either A, have our own badass
Blue
set,
studio?
like how great would it be to have a set, or at least just something on the walls? I don't understand.
Okay, first of all, I'm offended because I did my best fixer-upper impression to put a Stanley Cup banner behind Donnie and a retro 2007 Blues jersey.
Yeah, leave it to Alex to bring the Dave Checketts originated Brad Boyce. I'm going to turn this thing around. Is there
Turn it around, it's Oshie. So at least I went with the right player
Oh,
and
and
the
he
right
signed
time
it.
here.
Dude, I remember hearing Brad Boyce do a call-in on our afternoon show when it was Jeff and Tom, and he could have maybe been the worst athlete on the radio that I have ever heard.
Really?
It was painfully horrible, and you could hear Jeff and Tom just frantically trying to make it work. Anyway, is this going to be the funny...
I think I got that jersey at the Savas Center when they introduced Louis.
Oh, good.
That's what I was like, oh, this will be perfect.
Wow.
Right behind JR. Yeah, that's how old that thing is.
Notice after Tom Stillman took over how quick that jersey
Oh,
was
it went
going.
away quick. But I didn't have a whole lot of jersey options that, didn't have numbers behind it that would be like, why do you have that one hanging up? And let's be honest about this one. I have 3 kids in my household and right now a sick wife. So I went in the basement. I said, I need something blues. Banner, jersey, boom.
You put the room together, you go to all the trouble for the equipment, and then you think to yourself, you know what? Beige. I like it. Let's go with the whole hell of a lot of it. That's what I say.
As an Italian, my black hair looks great in beige.
It just does not.
Blends in really well over here.
It just does not make
We'll
any
get there.
sense.
This is the same Donnie I remember from a few months ago when we did our last podcast.
Oh, yeah. No, I'm still pissy.
Donnie doesn't take off.
Real quick before we start talking about the Blues. Hey, man, all of the good thoughts, all of the positive love going to TJ Oshie, who's going to, I would assume, be out the entire year. The Caps are going to put him on LTIR. Always, forever, will be one of my favorite players, one of my favorite Blues, and just genuinely seems like an amazing human being.
Yeah, and Donnie not only gone for the season, but he could be done for his career. He's got some back issues, and so he's going to be LTIR this year. And then, after being out a year, can you imagine a guy coming back from that? But, yeah, a big player in Blues history, even though they didn't win a Stanley Cup with him, that came after he left and went to Washington. Come grow with us. I mean, who can forget that? John Davidson saying that Oshie, Perron, Berglund would be the guys that we would lean on coming out of that lockout in 2006. Those are the players that they got. And they did trade TJ Oshie for Troy Brouwer, who scored a big goal.
Yeah, I was just going to say, it's kind of ironic. All three of those were still big pieces in them getting a Stanley Cup.
Yeah.
You got Oshie, who was traded for Brouwer, to where if you don't get over the Chicago Blackhawks hump, you're probably never getting to the point you did in 2019. Berglund, who was traded for Ryan O'Reilly, still not probably the prettiest of situations that happened, but you still got Ryan O'Reilly for Berglund, and then, of course, Perron being on this team when they won the Cup.
Absolutely amazing.
And, Donnie, I'll never forget, I have some family members that own Top Shooters Bar over in Columbia, Illinois, and we used to take some Blues players over there and do a show. It was with 590,
Yeah,
I
was your intern for those.
Yeah, Alex was the intern.
I was his intern for those.
And we would bring some players over there. I'll never forget, I said, hey, TJ, can you do the show at the bar? We'll pick you up. We'll take you over there. He showed up. They were wrapped around the bar twice. I think it was the most money Top Shooters early in its infancy ever made, all because of TJ Oshie. So, again, even though they didn't win, a fan favorite and a player that Blues fans look back
before the
fondly.
end of this show, I'm going to find a picture. I think I have a picture with TJ Oshie. Yep, right here.
From that night?
Look at this. I'm going to put this up on YouTube so people can see it right now.
Oh, my gosh, you're a baby.
Alex is
I mean, he is too.
But that is TJ Oshie at Top Shooters with Jeremy Rutherford.
Dude, that is awesome with the old school 590 fan in the back.
Yep. I got one of Brad Boy's too if you want to see those.
Oh, I mean,
this is just like photo album.
How can we not?
That's a video. That's how much he's talking.
He didn't want to take that picture more than anything. You just brought that up, and it brought back memories for me because I remember sitting next to Jeremy Rutherford when he's at the bar at Top Shooters doing those interviews with Oshie, with Shattenkirk, with Brad Boyce, and those were all fresh new players. You had one with Petro as well, like all brand new players. JR was interviewing them on his show.
It's so amazing, man. And we'll talk about this incarnation of the Blues, but there has been playoff success throughout the course of this organization. There has been the Stanley Cup run. But I swear to God, I have player memories like this team has won 100 Stanley Cups. You know what I'm saying? I think that's one of the best parts because you start talking about some of those old guys, man, and it doesn't go back to, oh, those were guys that didn't win the Stanley Cup. It just takes me back to another time where I was just loving this team in a different sort of way, different expectations kind of thing. But I'm so happy that hockey is here. God dang it, I'm just happy.
That's the way.
All right. So, boys, I guess the first thing to do is to turn this over to you guys and to talk about, the prospect tournament. You guys were there for that. We start there and then go into sort of training camp and what you guys have seen so far. But in the prospect tournament, were there any guys that really stuck out that maybe even made a case to make the team this year?
Go ahead, Alex.
Well, you got the obvious ones in Bolduc and Dvorsky, but I'll give you some kind of guys to keep at least on your radar moving forward. Because Bolduc, he was the best player on the ice in that tournament, which makes sense because he's probably the most NHL ready. Dvorsky looked good in his second night. First night, they said he was a little nervous, which I can anticipate being nervous too, being 19 years old and going in front of a big crowd at Centene.
And putting a bejesus ton of pressure on yourself to make the team.
Totally.
Yeah.
You're a 10th overall pick. You know the expectations that are placed on you. But there were two guys that I was really impressed by in that tournament. One was this Michael Buchinger kid who was drafted, I think it was 2020 if I'm not mistaken, but he's defenseman. He was running everything, offense, defense. He was their number one defenseman, and he was playing on his offhand on the right side. He was impressive to me. He was playing on the top unit, pretty much everything you can ask for. And then the other one was a kid that I think is going to start in the minors this year, Dylan Peterson. He spent the last 5 years playing with Macklin Celebrini and Boston University. And JR and I coughed at the same time. That was impressive.
Unison. That was amazing.
Impressive. Like a yawn. It was like a yawn. Can you jinx on coughs? But this Dylan Peterson kid, he's like 6'5". He's slim. And he skates fast, too. So those are two guys that I would say as a Blues fan, keep an eye on because I think both will be in Springfield this year.
Yeah, Peterson, I'm going to talk to him for a story coming up. And then the other one, the only one I'd add to that list is Simon Robertson.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, just so he's a guy from a couple years ago was drafted, and he kind of gets overlooked just because they've had so many, high-profile picks with Snuggerud and Dvorsky and those guys. But Simon Robertson, he might not come up and be, a 30-goal scorer, but he contributed in a lot of different ways, Alex. I think we saw he was involved in a lot of different plays. So Simon Robertson, a name to remember.
You got depth right now in terms of guys that'll be in the AHL, going back to juniors, going back to Europe, wherever that might be. But you got a lot of size in your pipeline. Like, that's the one thing. I believe there was only one guy under the size of 6 foot in that prospect tournament for the Blues.
Oh, wow.
Now, obviously, there were guys that weren't there, like Jimmy Snuggerud, who I think is above 6 foot.
The college guys,
yeah,
right?
Stenberg, Lindstein, the European guys, a couple of Russian players, they weren't there. But all of the other prospects you had, 6 foot or higher, with the exception of one player, and it was a forward.
And Alex, I tweeted that when I was at the prospect game that Sunday against Minnesota, is that, ever since 2019, Donnie, you run into people and they're always talking about the defense was so tall and lanky and, long sticks and they're breaking up plays. And for the first time that I can remember, now granted, that was a NHL team winning a Stanley Cup. These are prospects at a showcase. But these Blues prospects that I saw, tall, lanky, like you said, 6'3", 6'4", 6'5", and Minnesota and Chicago were trying to make plays and get the puck through the offensive zone, and all of a sudden here comes this big long stick, breaks it up. So these guys are, will they make the NHL? Who knows? Will they continue to play that type of game when they get here? Who knows? But it definitely looks like the Blues are trying to put together a roster that has more of those types of players.
All right, guys, now, not to be the contrarian here, just asking a legit question. So one of the things about a team like, say Florida, or even the Blues, I feel like when they won, was that the Blues were still fast enough to kind of balance out the heavy game. And it seems as though the question is, when you're drafting a bunch of guys that are bigger, that are houses, how do you make sure that you're still keeping up with that speed game too? Because the NHL, it's a freaking fast game. You can't just be big guys or you're going to get left in the dust. Or am I wrong on that?
No, I don't think you're wrong on it. I mean, the one thing for me that stuck out about 2018, 2019, yeah, they were fast, but if you go in terms of individual foot speed, they were slow. They played fast, and they also added that physicality. So how do you manage that speed in the NHL today? Well, you manage it by your physicality. Now, that doesn't mean going out there and hitting everything in sight, but it's forecheck, it's puck possession, it's cycling of the puck. That's what it sure seems, at least here in Bannister talk yesterday. That's what the emphasis is. Yes, you want to get up the ice fast. Yes, you want to get into the offensive zone quickly and out of your own zone. That's where the speed element comes into play. But once you're in, it's not so much about speed as it's hockey sense and size and strength, so that you can keep the puck alive. I mean, Edmonton did that. Now, Edmonton's got Connor freaking McDavid, who is fast as all hell. They don't call him Connor McJesus for anything. But like when they would get into the offensive zone, man, they had so much ability to hold on to the puck. The same with Florida. That's where they looked so fast.
Yeah, and just to make the point clear is, some of these guys with these long sticks that are coming up through the system, they're not, lug nuts. They're not big ogre type guys that are going to take forever to get up the ice. They, they can skate too.
Yeah.
And so I think that's what the Blues are bringing into the system. And look, not all of them are going to make it. Let's just say there's one or two guys out of the entire group. In 3 or 4 years, we're looking at the roster. You got guys left over from the current roster. You got guys they bring in via trade for agency, and then you supplement it with these guys. So if there's only one or two that make it, at least you can tell what the Blues are going after.
I want to get to what you guys have seen so far at Centene in the last day or so as far as lines and things. But since we spoke last, Tory Krug had the press conference with the press, talking about being put on long-term injured reserve. And, in just listening to him, my heart absolutely breaks for the guy. You could just see it in his face, how much it hurts him. But also, too, one thing that I just wanted to bring up on the podcast that I found to be amazing is that Krug injured himself 6 years ago. Mm-hmm. That dude has been playing for 6 years on that thing. Whoa! Like, not that I didn't respect the guy before, not that I didn't like the guy before, I absolutely did. But my God, hockey players, man, that's freaking nuts. I wonder at what point it got to be, I just can't I just can't do this anymore.
Yeah, and the biggest thing is
That's so scary. Not to interrupt you.
No,
but-
he broke the ankle playing in the playoffs with the Boston Bruins.
And I saw that replay.
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
You know, I had not seen that replay until this all came up, and it's like, I'm going to go back and look at that replay, and it's a pretty nasty
It's awful.
hit, the way his ankle buckles up. And so he had that injury and recovered from that, but then the arthritis builds up. So that's where you get the pre-arthritic changes in the ankle that the Blues refer to when they're talking about why he needed the surgery. So you hear that he needs surgery, and you think, okay, well, this is something that they can go in, fix it. He'll be back in a few months, a year. But as I read up on the story, because I had some Blues fans, why didn't he have it at the end of last season? Then he'd be back for the start. That's not this type of surgery. Yeah. This is called talar fusion surgery. This is the type of surgery that Tiger Woods had. And what it does is they go in there and they put some metal in there and they screw the two bones together, fuse them together, why it's called a fusion, and it limits the mobility side to side, is what Dr. Rick Lehman told me for my story at The Athletic. He's the Blues former doctor years ago, and so this is career threatening. Tory Krug had been putting this off because he knew the circumstances of the surgery.
Yeah.
He knew he would have to get it one day, but he said, like you said, he was hoping for 40, 45 years old when he's done playing hockey. So there's no guarantees coming back. You know, what Dr. Lehman told me is that, in a year, when he recovers from the surgery, then you get back into your physical training and trying to get back into the league, and then that's going to be your answer. See what it looks like. So yeah, a very tough surgery for him. He did have it a couple days ago. Doug Armstrong told us, and quote unquote went well, and now the rehab begins, and we'll see what happens.
Well, let me bring this up too, and then I think that we can start talking about the team. But in watching Doug Armstrong's press conference just the other day, gentlemen, this is a decidedly different tone coming from Doug Armstrong than it was at the press conference a year ago. Whereas, hey, we hope to do this. We hope. And this year, it was, hey, we're good enough to compete. It's time to compete. No more talking. Let's roll. That, to me, got me excited.
Yeah.
Because the GM throwing down kind of the gauntlet. You know what I mean? Like, I like it. I'm here. I'm ready for it. So talk about this team,
Also,
guys. What are you seeing?
The range of emotions for Donnie, for where we were so angry at the beginning and then get happy.
No,
this is why I love you.
Listen, it still pisses me off. We should have a
You just gotta
friggin'
turn the leaf.
We should have a friggin' rap in here. No, what happens is that this is honest to God, this is what happens. I'm in a super pissy mood. I come in here with you goofballs.
Yeah.
I start talking about hockey, and then I just get in a better mood and I don't care anymore as
See?
much. So, yeah, okay,
Yeah,
a little
it
bit.
works that way.
He also just went from Tory Krug to winning the cup in about 30 seconds.
I love Donnie so
Listen,
much.
man, I'm a man of many emotions. What can I
I
say?
love Donnie.
But what do you guys think, man? Like, I want to be realistic about the team. It's not as though I think that, man, Stanley Cup ready. But, guys, I'm really friggin' excited, and I don't understand why we can't be a playoff team at this point.
So you're not wrong with Doug's mindset, because last year I remember in that media scrum for the first day of training camp, and it was like, we kind of hope to be in the middle of the top of the middle half in the Western Conference. Now he's basically saying, and he said it on the opening drive with Randy Carricker and Danny McEnbrook yesterday. It's like, we can compete with anybody in the Western Conference. And that's where it was like, oh, shoot, okay. I still personally believe you have top-tier teams in the Western Conference. I still think there's about 4 or 5 just powerhouses that you're going to be tough to deal with. But beyond those powerhouses, you're talking about the next tier. In that next tier, I think you have so many other teams. Mm-hmm. Now, one of those 6 spots that are the division, you can't do anything about because it's the Pacific. But you got 2 wild card spots. And to me, I think I look at the Western Conference as the top 3 are probably already called for. Your 4 teams are going to be battling it out. One that drops off moves down to that wild card. And then you've got 3 teams fighting for 1 wild card spot. Because I think Calgary's made it pretty clear they're in a retool. I think Chicago's still in the middle of that. I think Anaheim is still in the middle of it. I think it's you, Utah, Seattle, and Minnesota fighting for those 4 spots in the wild card spot.
I think they can be a playoff team. It's a big if. 92 points last year. I was just talking to the opening drive, doing a segment, and here's my thing. Just because they had 92 points last year and they're better this year on paper, doesn't mean that they're going to have 95, 96 points.
Mm-hmm.
It just does. You can't guarantee.
Yeah.
They didn't have many injuries last year, right? And things have to come together. Now, I think that they improve the roster. I think they're faster. I think they're bigger. Even though, like Alex said, there's a lot of playoff spots that are probably spoken for. I believe that they can be a wild card team. But I still think, and I was talking to Alex about this, I still think they're in that retool stage. And what does that mean? I mean, just people probably want you to stop using that word. It means that things are still in flux, right? You're still, okay, we brought in these guys to keep us competitive right now, but we're still eye on the future. We're still bringing in these young players. We're, might see Dvorsky this year, might see Snuggerud at the end of the season. Even when they get here, it's going to take a couple years before they're ready to take the team and be that core. And in the meantime, like Doug Armstrong and Tom Stillman have said, they want to make the playoffs. So they've filled some holes. And I think that if they can stay healthy and if all these new faces can come together and play well, they can be that type of team. Now, one thing I will add is that when I talked to Pavel Buchnevich a couple days ago for a story, he said our top guys have to be our best players. No bigger cliche in the world, right? But he's right. Like, you can't have Buchnevich going, 20 games without a goal. You can't have Braden Shen going 17 and 19 games without a goal. If this Blues team is going to be in the postseason, don't tell me about the upgrades in the bottom six. Don't tell me that Ryan Suter's third pair of defense. Don't even tell me that Broberg's in the second pair.
Yeah.
Tell me that Nick Leddy and Colton Parayko are getting the job done, and tell me that Braden Shen is on pace for 30 goals at the start of the season. Jake Neighbors is still a 25-goal guy, 30-goal guy maybe, and these other guys are getting the job done. Because if that's not happening, then this isn't a playoff team.
Damn it.
JR came out firing.
He sure did, man.
What's that called? Wet blanket in this business? Put that right over the fire that Donnie had? Unbelievable.
No, man, but you know what, though? That's a good hit of reality.
Great. You bummed him out.
No.
Son of a.
It's not a bum out, because what I really like, my favorite kind of teams, as most of us are the dog or the underdog, is the team that you don't think is supposed to do it, but they scrap and they claw and they fight and they do what they can to win.
For sure.
I don't expect, we talked about this a bunch last year. There were definitely points of time in the last year and a half to 2 years where there would just be games where you were like, I don't think anybody told the Blues that they had a game tonight. There was a team out there, but I don't think that those were Blues players.
Meaning every San Jose Sharks game that they played?
Seemingly, but I just want this team to push itself more. And again, it doesn't have to be a win every single night, but just go out there and bust your ass and make the other team hate you. That's what I would like. I would like for us to just be the biggest goddamn pain in the ass in the entire NHL.
Well, and they could be that. They could be that. And you got a Fox that's going to come in. He likes to hit. He's going to play down low. But here's the key, and I'm glad you brought that up. San Jose, Columbus, Chicago, we could go on, the teams that we lost to. Guess what? A lot of these new faces, new players coming in, they don't know that storyline. They don't know that the team has this thing where you just lay down against the San Jose and lose 5-0 in a key game. So I think that's going to bring a different element. I mean, I'm sure media fans are going to talk about that going into those games, but these are players who are going to come. No, let's get the job done. Like these guys are coming. Joseph from Ottawa, Faxa from Dallas, from teams where they were helping those teams compete, and now they're coming together. I think that, that's going to bring a different ingredient this year that the Blues were lacking last year.
Here's why I think that they're a playoff team, and I'm pretty confident with it. Now, some of this just could be my excitement for the season. It happens an awful lot for me. Everybody remembers the Hole in Oates comp that I pulled off of 3 years ago. But one, you've got Jordan Binnington. And last year, Binnington and Hofer were incredible. And just talking to Binnington on Wednesday, and I know it's a vibes check thing, who really cares about that? But Binnington seems to be, he even told us that he's in much better shape. He used a different workout regime this offseason. Mindset's a lot thicker. And I think there's a little bit of pissed off mentality from Binnington about not getting a vote for the top 3 in the Vezina last year for how he played. That guy keeps you in games. But I also looked at this yesterday because Doug, when he did his press conference, mentioned that this feels a lot like where the Blues were in 2010, 2011, and 2012. Now, if you remember correctly, 2010 was that 83-point team, Davis Payne's first year. 2011 started off bad. They fired Payne. Hitchcock took over, 109 points that season. I don't think you're a 109-point team. I also don't believe you're an 83-point team. I looked at that 2010 roster. They had 124 career playoff games played on that NHL roster when they started the season. This year, they've got 894 playoff games. And I know that doesn't matter because who cares if you're not in the playoffs? I think those playoff games matter and being on your roster for day one because they know how to avoid those losing streaks. They know how to avoid the 4 or 5 game losing streaks that keep you out of a playoffs. they at least keep you in games. One night, it's a bad night, shake it off, get to the next night. That's why I feel like this team, I think they're probably somewhere around like 94 and 96 points. Does that make the playoffs? I don't know, because I don't know what this Western Conference is going to look like. Frankly, there's teams I don't buy into, and there are some teams that I do buy into. But I don't believe this team is an 85, 86-point team.
All right, well, it's only been a day. But what have you guys seen so far out at Centene as far as, who's playing with who this early on? Any of those kinds of things that you think we need to know?
Yeah, so they started out yesterday with Bolduc. It was with Thomas and Cairo. So obviously trying to give him a primetime spot, and we'll see that probably in the exhibition games. And then Dvorsky was playing with Neighbors and Shen, a similar situation, giving him a primetime spot. I took a stab, because there's 3 groups, Donnie. So you got Group A, Group B, Group C. And you got like pairs in this group and a pair over here and a pair over here. Maybe you have a line together. I think they really do like the idea of Holloway, Foxa, and Joseph as the third line. We saw that yesterday. So what I tried to do is I tried to take them from the 3 groups and blend them together and see what that roster could look like. That article's up at The Athletic today. And then defensively, you saw that Scott Prunovich was with Colton Parayko. That's a situation where they're giving Prunovich good ice time. But then the telling one was Broberg with Falk. That's something, Alex, that I think we all expected. And then you can touch on that, but I'll say that the third defensive pair of people didn't see was Ryan Suter and Matthew Kessel. Another thing that we expected, the veteran Suter coming in and playing with the young guy Kessel. And then, if Prunovich is going to play well with Parayko and show that he can be a part of this thing and be the quarterback for the power play that the Blues need, he's going to have to steal some games, I believe, from Ryan Suter if he's going to find himself in the lineup.
Yeah, well, and that's the competition, so to speak. And again, the first day, who knows? Things can change a lot. But I looked at a lot of the guys that were with people. Dvorsky with Shannon Neighbors. Bolduc with Thomas and Cairo. You had Kapanen playing with Buchnevich and Brandon Saad. Buch is the centerman. And I found that interesting because Kapanen's put in a premier spot. And so is Bolduc. And so is Dvorsky. Those are guys that might be fighting for one of those roster spots to either be on the NHL or go down to the American Hockey League, and they want to see what you look like with the best players on the ice. Now, they're not going to play in those spots. Maybe you're a third-line winger, fourth-line winger, but you get to play with the best to find out how you're going to do it. But the competition on defense, I think it's pretty clear-cut and dry. You saw what the top 6 are going to look like with Broberg and Falk, Suter and Kessel, and then it's going to be Leddy and Parayko. But don't overlook the fact that Scott Perunovich was playing with Colton Parayko and P.O. Joseph was playing with Nick Leddy, and he's playing on his right side. So those are 2 guys that I don't know how they're going to formulate the roster if you go 8 defensemen and 13 forwards, 14 forwards, and 7 defensemen, but it is pretty clear that they want to see what Perunovich and P.O. Joseph look like because those are guys who are playing with NHL top pair defensemen to find out, can you do it at the NHL level?
Man, all right, so here's what we got to do. We got to break because you guys got to get out to Centene for practice today. So why don't we do this? I've got some emails here. Let's hold them off to the next podcast. Let's tell folks, if you'd like to send us an email, you've got a question, LMBP, Last Minute Blues Podcast at 1057thepoint.com. We'll get it in here and we'll read it. One thing I did want to mention just real quick on our way out, and I know you guys got to go, but Dakota Joshua in the last few years, absolutely one of my favorite Blues. I love how he went about his business. During the course of, I believe, a medical for his year with Vancouver Canucks, it found that he had I believe, a lump, testicular cancer. Guys, listen. We're all in that age range. We hate going to the doctor. We don't like any of those things. Guys, it can save your friggin' life. No screwing around. Go to your doctor's appointment. Let him look at the fellas. Let's make sure everything's okay. All right? We want you here when the Blues win the Stanley Cup again, whenever the hell that is.
Yeah.
All right? I just wanted to make sure that we mentioned that because he was a fantastic player.
Don, it's great you bring that up. And, I'm 49 years old, and I've, gotten the colonoscopy, gotten some other tests, got some blood tests. Now here's another test. I need to go out. Like, you got to stay on top of this stuff. And Dakota, he was here a short time, but became kind of a fan favorite because of the way that he played. And I'll never forget the one story. I talked to his mom for the story, and she said she played hockey. She was a women's hockey player up in Canada, and she said that she had 3 kids, and she put them in the bleachers, and she played for an hour, so she didn't want the kids running around the rink. She would take a belt and loop all 3 kids into the same belt and have them sit up in the bleachers.
Damn, I need to do
just
this.
So the camera, yeah, that's what you need to do, Alex.
I'll see you out Sunday morning for morning skate, JR, and I'm bringing all 3 of my kids, and I'm putting them around a belt, strapping them to a chair, and be like, JR is going to watch you. Do not move from this spot.
I just can't imagine that would be very relaxing playing while keeping your eye, making sure that, oh, God, only 2 of them are there.
Hey,
Where did the other one go?
You don't have to keep your eye on anything because if there's a group of 3 people wrapped around a belt, everybody's going to be watching.
Yeah. So they only had 3, but Alex, you have 3. If you have 5 or 6 or 7 kids, you can use one of my belts because it'll take all the.
I can promise you, there will be not 5, 6, or 7 kids.
All right, boys, get out to practice. We will do the Last Minute Blues podcast again very, very soon. Thank you very much, as always, for listening. For our dude, Jeff Burton, it is the Last Minute Blues podcast. For Alex, for Jeremy, I'm Donnie Fandango. Let's go Blues!
The Last Minute Blues podcast. Hear more at 1057thepoint.com.